Hello everyone and welcome to this very special episode of How's the Shared Living podcast. Today is the final episode in our special 3-part mini-series in partnership with the Class Foundation. Today we will be discussing how we can cultivate the leaders of tomorrow. But firstly, introductions. I'm Sarah Canning from the Property Marketing Strategist.
I'm Dan Smith from Resi Consultancy.
And we are without Deanie today, but we do have some very special guests. A warm welcome to Kellyanne from the Class Foundation, marketing industry leader Romy Levin, and John Badge from Homes for Students. Hello everyone.
Morning. Hi.
Before we start though, let's hear from our mini-series sponsor, My Student Halls.
Housed is sponsored by Spotlight Boost on mystudenthalls.com. Use Spotlight Boost to stand out in search results and drive more leads to your properties.
The Spotlight Boost by My Student Halls is definitely a resource all PBSA operators should be looking at over those final few weeks of the letting season. So make sure you get in touch with Dan Roberts and the team there. So anybody that's been following this mini-series will have heard from the last couple of episodes from Kellyanne, and you've thoroughly shared with us the challenges and potential solutions to support the growing demand of good quality housing for students across Europe. And today we'll be discussing how the sector can do that and who are the leaders that can make that happen. I think you made it very clear that enough talking, we need action now, and people that can be accountable for that action. And some of our audience might be familiar with the community hubs you've cultivated at the Class conference over the last few years. So can you share more about them and why they were created?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. And thank you for those that have stuck with us over the 3 episodes. I do love to talk, as most people know, but I hope you actually gained something from it. But I'm really excited to talk about the community hubs. This came from a real gap that we keep seeing in the PBSA sector. There's so much talent and knowledge within the industry, but it's often struck into silos and people kind of stay in their own roles, in their own companies, and even within their own countries. So while senior leaders often get the opportunity to go to conferences, networking, and move between big brands, we don't seem to be doing much for the rising talent. So we risk losing brilliant people simply because we don't have the space for them to grow or connect. So we created the community hubs. They are exclusive to our partners and they focus on key areas like marketing, operations, HR, asset management, and investment. So the idea was pretty simple: real conversations between people doing the work. It's about creating opportunity for leadership. We now have community leaders like Romy and John, who we're going to introduce a little bit later, who moderate these sessions, but also guide the discussions. So yeah, they're not just from one organisation either. They're not from senior roles. They're just people who have stepped up and want to take the conversation to another level. So it's a chance to grow skills in moderation, public speaking, sector leadership in a real supportive environment. So these spaces are about sharing ideas, solving problems, and learning from one another. It's not just the personal growth, but it's also about supporting the whole industry to move forward. So for us at the Class, it gives insight into what's really going on across the sector, and over time, it'll help us build a stronger, connected, more future-proof industry, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely seen that through kind of working with you on the community hubs over the last few years. It's so rare to see an organisation that I think embraces not just people. We're not talking about one demographic. We're not talking about young people or under 30s or under 25s, or it's not a token. I guess it's, you're not putting, a badge on it necessarily. You're kind of saying that these are people that wouldn't necessarily normally get the opportunity to be exposed to these kind of conversations and networking opportunities, and to kind of do something about it, really. I guess it's the work that you've been doing with these community hubs, Kellyanne. Have you seen other organisations kind of step up as well, or do you still feel like you're standing out?
Well, first and foremost, the only badge that we've been putting that's been put on it is John Badge. But
very good.
No, I have seen other organisations that are doing really good stuff. I think Paddy is a good example. He's doing lots of stuff about kind of who are the next generation of industry leaders and how are people that are coming from non-traditional backgrounds going into real estate. I think that's a really great initiative. I've seen Soraya, for example, leading on like women's networks as well, which has been pretty phenomenal with GSL. There's conversations that I've had also with other kind of well-positioned and industry organisations such as Unipol that are looking at creating training sessions for leadership. I've also spoken to many universities, IE University, LSE, that have really spoken about their real estate courses and actually how a lot of like real estate societies and courses don't actually really have like a PBSA specific module, for example. And then finally, we've got like the Developers Club. I'm one of their trustees as well for their foundation. So they are also supporting vulnerable people who need housing. But on the other side of that, they have who are the SME developers, the rising stars in industry, and how can they support them by creating networks, training and opportunities for them to basically thrive. So there's lots of things going on, but let me tell you now, a lot of this is based in the UK. I don't really see much going on in the greater European scale. And as you said, Sarah, they're very specific to certain type of qualities in cohorts. So whether it's just for women or whether it's just for young people or so on. So this is an opportunity for anybody that wants to develop their leadership skills while growing their network. So yeah, I think that's where the opportunity lies.
It's a great opportunity as well. I think with Europe, it's a really interesting one. All too often in the UK, we say like it's the UK and Europe, when actually every single country has something individual, like in terms of the BTR or the multifamily or the PBSA and the universities. And I think there are some bodies out there, but that's where the Class Foundation really comes in. And I feel, and I think most people in the industry would feel, that it sort of embodies all of Europe, to be completely honest. So I think that's where these community hubs are a great opportunity to learn a bit from other people throughout Europe. And the one that I came to the other day, the marketing hub, that had plenty of people from all over Europe on it. And that's really interesting to get those perspectives, because we're so siloed, I think, in PBSA in particular a lot of the time. And we need to take more learnings from other countries, from other regions, from other industries as well. So, you know, the more hospitality can bleed into that, the better, I think. So yeah, keep up the good work, but great that there are some other bodies out there, in particular in the UK.
And on that topic, I think now's a good time to bring in Romy and John, who have been, spearheading and leading some of these community hubs. So, Romy, I'll go to you first. What's your role within the community hubs for the Class Foundation?
I'm fortunate I've been both a participant and a guest moderator. So I was very honoured to be asked to help moderate a session. They're incredibly engaging discussions. So the kind of main purpose of moderating is to help facilitate discussions, encourage people to share best practices, and most importantly, listen very, very closely about what others are experiencing across the sector, so that we can bring more people into that dialogue and expand the discussion. Exactly to your point, Dan, a couple of sessions ago, there was a real focus on France, and that was quite a nuance for a lot of us on the call, because maybe we have experience in the UK and Spain, but that was a really new point of view. And it was amazing to have people working in the French market come on board and share things we hadn't thought of or ask questions about our experience. So participant and moderator.
And John, how about you?
I've had the honour of being able to moderate the operations group a few times actually, and hopefully will continue to do so for a bit longer. I find it hugely rewarding. As a moderator, as Romy rightly says, we're here to kind of encourage and tease out some of the discussion. Some of the best practice and sharing of ideas has been great, and it's really nice to do that in a kind of non-competitive environment. I think we all at times will be competitors in our sector, but one thing that I think these groups do is they kind of enable kind of open dialogue, which I think has been really powerful. And the people joining them, there's all sorts of talent, and as Dan mentioned, also we've seen, in the operations group alone, we've seen people from at least 5 or 6 different countries, at least across Europe, and everyone brings something to the table. So it's been really great just to listen to people's views. And interestingly, despite often being a little bit UK kind of heavy, it's great to hear that everyone's facing pretty similar challenges that people can explore, and that's only going to help kind of sector cohesion, I'd say.
What you just said, John, about kind of non-competitiveness, I think is really, really key. I mean, I've been in the sector for about a million years, and I think that it's been really unhealthy at times how closed people have been to sharing things. And we're generally, in cycles going through the same thing at the same time, albeit from a different angle. And, there's people that have been in the sector a long time and people that are new and people that have come from other sectors as well. So we, hats off to you both for kind of trying to break those barriers down and encourage people to open up.
I'm a huge believer in transferable skills, and I believe that PBSA needs to continue to bring people in from other sectors that about bringing those new ideas. And it's crazy to try and keep all those new ideas to yourself. The more we can share best practice and new ways to solve the challenges we have as a sector, that's only going to benefit everyone in the longer run, I'd say.
And I think the people who are willing to join these sessions and collaborate, we know that sharing a bit of insight isn't everything. That isn't the competitive advantage. It's still in the execution. So there's absolutely no harm in sharing something you've learned or asking for feedback on a challenge and seeing how other people are approaching it. Because exactly as John said, it's amazing. We all do very similar things, but we approach things very differently. And there are a lot of things we do in a similar fashion, but so many different things that we do very, very differently, whether that's due to the size of team, resource, people's backgrounds, like you said, John, if they come from another industry. So it's always, I feel like frantically, whether you're a participant or a moderator, you're taking notes because there's so much inspiration that comes from these different points that people are sharing. And critically, because it's from a range of different stakeholders in the organization who aren't the C-suite, there's a lot of different perspectives to be had based on which team they're in, what level of the organization they're in, what level of their professional journey they're in. So it's hugely insightful and lots of kind of light bulb moments of, I really want to take that away and try it. Have we thought about implementing this in the same way? How are they measuring that? Tell me more. I'm struggling with this. It's a really kind of collaborative discussion. And I think it's because people are coming to the table with a fresh perspective of, exactly like you said, Sarah, this isn't about competition anymore. It can't be. We're more interested in learning and doing things better than we are about remaining siloed and cut off.
Romy, I think just picking up on that point around kind of siloed and the benefit of sharing that kind of fresh views or fresh ideas, or just this is how I solved a problem. There are challenges around, I guess, the maturity or the cohesion we have in different countries around Europe. Certainly, we find solutions. Sometimes we talk about solutions that are experienced in the UK that there isn't maybe resource or the ability to deliver maybe in country. We've seen people trying to book courses in the UK from Italy just to get exposure to a certain type of training, mental health first aid, for example. So I think there are sector challenges that we're certainly on a journey to try and solve, but just talking about stuff and being aware that there are things that exist can only raise awareness and help maybe those things be brought into the rest of Europe, or vice versa. We can certainly learn in the UK from some of the other countries and how they're doing things as well, which is often probably a little bit less restrictive or structured versus our models, But it's definitely a great forum to share that energy and ideas.
Kellyanne, to what extent have you seen it change over time in terms of the way that people are sharing information? Because the way I see it is getting tougher to fill beds, I think, in certain locations, obviously with different areas of maturity, especially in the UK. That, I would have thought, leads to more people becoming a bit more secretive, a bit more focused on their competitive advantage. But it feels like there's actually a bit of a step change, especially with some of the work you're doing and in these community hubs, that people are actually being more open. They're sharing best practice. And is that a result of, is that just a natural evolution, or is that a result of more focus on the student and well-being, etc.? What do you think?
I think it's a little bit of both, really. I also think that the industry, although despite what maybe many of the agents and some of the others have been saying about this kind of optimistic view on everything, I think actually on the ground, a lot of people have had quite difficult times recovering post-COVID as well, particularly. And I think we're a lot of people are just trying to find their feet. I think a lot of people are overworked at the moment and then don't really have these opportunities to kind of grow. Then the growth of that kind of the BTR sector as well, and a lot of talent leaving PBSA. I think there's, I think this is the reason why we're seeing some of these things. And then with the pressures of being able to deliver fantastic, for example, well-being and social programs, everything's just been intensified. So what I've seen through the evolution of the actual community hubs is, at the beginning, it was about really maybe complaining a little bit more, and also a lot of people either not getting involved and then some quite dominant speakers just basically identifying some of the issues. So I'll give an example here. So in our HR and People Hub, it kind of started off by talking about basically that there was no talent and that it's actually a very difficult role, and they don't have many opportunities to kind of connect with each other or they basically were talking about how all their job descriptions, for example, were not fit for purpose anymore. And that now evolved into, okay, let's sit down. If the job roles are not fit for purpose, like what can we do as a sector to rethink those job titles and role structures? And I think that then was a really positive evolution after having 3 online check-ins where they now started to get to know each other. They've got a LinkedIn page where they can connect with each other. We're also now looking at implementing WhatsApp groups, which was feedback from these sessions that they want to continue to engage with each other. So I think we're seeing the evolution of like from problem and complaining into more solution, working together. And I think that comes from what Romy and John were saying in terms of feeling like it's a safe space, but then also being like, actually, we're better together from learning from each other.
Yeah, that's a really good point about kind of fostering positive conversations. I think, certainly in my experience, when you do get people together, you have to kind of break through that kind of moany bit about, about their jobs. It's, it's natural, isn't it? Because that's your kind of shared experience a lot of the time, but it's down to the moderators like Romy and John to kind of re-divert the questions and kind of, get over that to get positive outcome out of it.
Yeah, but there's real benefit in giving people a space to really complain and be real about it, because at the end of the day, there's nobody really within your organization that you can just say these things out loud to, because you're seen as just get on with your job. So creating those spaces where they can do that, them then feeling safe, heard and seen, and having that kind of relationship with the other stakeholders that are in that group to then transform that into solutions is really powerful.
That's such a good point, Kellyanne. Romy and John, kind of, what have you found any challenges in moderating the sessions? You do, I've been in Romy's sessions, and I know that you do a great job, but it's not easy. You're bringing together some people that don't know each other. You're bringing them across Europe, in a kind of, a virtual space, really, initially. So how do you both find that?
I think I'm really fortunate in that I've been remote working for the best part of 5 or 6 years now. So I kind of thrive in that awkward space where people aren't quite sure what to say. And I think trying to set everyone at ease and teasing things out of people. One of the best things I think about starting the sessions the way we do, there's a lot of people on them now. These sessions are growing exponentially, but getting an intro in and vaguely understanding where people are coming from in terms of their geography, their team, helps you to kind of then say, okay, we're talking about, for example, AI. We've got a couple of digital experts on the call. Who are they? Can we ask, would you like to share something, and make it not, you're not calling anyone out to say something, but offering people the opportunity to share if they want, because we also have to be cognizant of it is representative of lots of people across Europe. There might be a lag in terms of technology. You need to give people a moment just to digest the question and think what their response is and be comfortable sharing.
I think in addition to that, Romy, I think one of the challenges sometimes when these groups are getting bigger is to, and as a moderator, is to recognise when to try and tease something out with someone. Particularly, some people will sit there very quietly and are content to do so. If they have something to add, they just sometimes need a bit of a prod or a nudge. And particularly if you know that person from either from a certain location or certain business, and you know there's something about them, you can absolutely try and encourage them to bring some of their expertise and knowledge to the table. I think one of the challenges we do need is we need more engagement from senior members in our sector to push stroke help people engage with things like this. There's certainly some businesses that are really well represented, and they do way above and beyond. And sometimes you're on a call and there's 8 people from one business there, and you think it's fantastic to see that level of engagement. There are some market absences, I'd say, from some businesses that I know have got plenty of people. I know there's ambition. They just maybe haven't that hasn't filtered its way through, or we just need to find a better way to engage them. I'm hoping they're not actively discouraging people. I don't think they would ever do that, but I think it's just an awareness piece from the right senior people trying to make it available for other people to spend some time engaging, I suppose.
Yeah, John, I can say that is absolutely the case. We We are engaging with lots of, investors, operators, developers, all types of organizations from the industry. We're telling them about it, but there definitely is some organizations that see more value in this or are prioritizing this. I would like to see this as an action from the sector in terms of seeing the real value in that. We're not trying to sell something in this space. Like, this is it's a real opportunity for them to be able to grow and thrive. I started a young professionals network in my early 20s when I lived in Leeds, and I learned so much from other people in that, from different industries and so on, in different remits, at different levels, whether it was mentorship, building kind of different strong, resilient networks, which I still use today. So I'm hoping that can be used in the same way in these networks as well.
John, Homes for Students are obviously the second biggest player in PBSA and obviously across BTR. I know you've got about 55,000 beds or so, probably more now since yesterday. It wouldn't surprise me. But how much value are you seeing in these sessions? Because I think we have a lot of smaller and mid-range players who are looking for knowledge sharing, and I see them at all the events. And then actually, I think that some of the bigger players are actually underrepresented. And is that because, firstly, they're so busy, or is it because they're under-resourced, potentially? Or is it just because they're just getting on doing their own thing? They're not really that bothered about knowledge sharing so much, or potentially learning from the wider industry. I don't know what you think.
I think there's I guess there's not a single answer to that. Is everyone in a business like HFS, is everyone busy all the time? Of course we are. We are a very fast-paced environment. We don't stand still for a day. You rightly say we probably have more beds tomorrow than we do today. But I can only talk about HFS from my perspective, but I think it's something we really strongly do believe in, these hubs. I've got a couple of other colleagues who are, sit in kind of the same level as I do, who have been involved or have attended and are keen to continue to do so. I think for me, the opportunity is to now, we want to push forward our, the next wave of talent, I suppose. We've just recently completed our first cohort of an internal progression program. It's a 3-tiered one, but we've just completed that. And some of the people who've come through that are looking to take that next step. And these are the sort of environments where those people can put themselves into. They just might need a bit of signposting to know they're there, but they can put themselves into and still continue to learn and develop and absorb more knowledge about sector, and all the other things that are going on. I just can't see any negatives in doing that. So any business that can't make a small amount of time for their people to kind of integrate into things like this, I think it's a very short-sighted view. So it's something we're really keen to do a lot more of.
Completely agree, John. You need the leadership to champion the people in the business that should be engaging in these forums and inspiring them and feeling like they get value or added value from working for that employer, because that employer is championing them to be involved in external initiatives and giving them opportunities to be heard in the industry. There's so much to be said from all of the extracurriculars you can offer people to engage them and make them feel valued day to day and keep them motivated. And I'm so lucky to have been led by Soraya Comunello, and I can pass that on to people in my team. Like, if you champion the people who work with you and who work for you, no bad can come from that, can it? You're encouraging them to go out there. You're increasing business value if you can create a next generation of networking. And that's one of my favorite things from the community hub so far, is that you've created a brand new network without the kind of awkwardness that someone in a more junior position might feel about walking into a huge conference room and trying to approach an individual and start a conversation. The other day, to your point, John, I walked up to David Chatterton and said, "Hi, I've only seen you on the screen in the community hub. So great to meet you." And immediately now we've got a personal rapport. I know about his life, his background, his work, his team. And that was all from having had this introduction and this kind of virtual engagement in the hub.
I have no doubt you know all about Dave Chatterton's life. He loves the chat, but he is such a fantastic industry leader. And I think, Kellyanne, what I was going to say is that you've curated some brilliant industry leaders, but also you're bringing through the next level of talent as well. And I think that's what as you said, Romy, someone like Soraya, and this isn't like a Nido Lovin or anything like that. This is very much, focused on that talent. Someone like Soraya is able to bring that through. And I think, being on the marketing hub with her moderating the other day, it was so accessible for absolutely everyone. She involved everyone. I actually rocked up to that thinking that it was just going to be effectively like a bit like a webinar. And then next thing I know, I'm on camera in my gym kit and, suddenly I've got to introduce myself. So, which, I don't have too much of a problem doing, of course. It's more about shutting me up most of the time. But I think that's where it felt so inclusive and so accessible. And I'd certainly encourage everyone to get involved. But yeah, Kellyanne, just a bit of kudos, I think, to the Class Foundation there for bringing through the next generation of leaders within all areas of the business, whether operations, sales, marketing, finance, FM, ESG, whatever it might be. I think the more that we can champion those who have been before and then bring through the next level of talent, I think that's such a clear mandate for the Class Foundation.
I've worked in corporate environments for a lot of my career, and then have become obviously a freelancer and self-employed. And I always say that if I'd given myself the time, or the businesses that I'd worked for had given me the time to learn more when I was in those corporate roles, I'd have been so much better at my job. Like, I just, you're on the conveyor belt, and, post-COVID, I guess we're in a situation where we have webinars and we have podcasts, which we didn't have for, most of my career previous to that. So the only way to kind of get learning experiences to be sent on a formal learning course, which, as we know in this sector, there isn't really anything that's, that's specific to us. And I knew that there were conferences out there, but I was never invited to the conferences because only the development and acquisitions team were invited to the conferences. So I just think it's kind of chalk and cheese now. Thank goodness, like, we're in a position now where these opportunities are here. And I can't emphasize enough that, as somebody who does a lot of interviewing for clients and a lot of talent spotting, is, my first kind of thing is, okay, you're in your job, but what else do you do? How can you prove that you have this passion and this interest and this drive? And, if they say that they've attended webinars and they've been to conferences and they've listened to podcasts and they read blogs, then that's a massive tick for me, because it just shows that either you or your industry have kind of carved that space and time out for you to kind of, accelerate your learning.
I think so. I fell into student accommodation. I think most people say that back in 2015, and I had to make it all up as I went along. I had support. It was more kind of scaffolding to kind of work within, I suppose. But I had to make it all up as I went along. I made quite a few mistakes, and I didn't feel like I really had the support of the industry. No one knew me. It was very much, the old boys network at the time. It's definitely not the old boys network anymore, that's for sure. And so I think, again, that's where these sessions can just make it more inclusive. That shared learning is absolutely key. But back to that point, how can we make sure that student living can really be seen as a career? Because, like I said, I fell into it. I wasn't actually told by the recruitment consultant that was trying to get me away from the Bombay Sapphire Distillery, where I previously was, what industry it was. She said, I'm not going to tell you what industry it is. Just turn up, go and meet this MD, and then see what you think. And that was my first induction into PBSA. So, yeah, how can we make sure that student living really is seen as a career?
I think, Dan, you're right. Nearly everybody I know I've ever come across has fallen into PBSA. To be honest, most people don't even know it's a sector. I try and explain to my friends sometimes, what do you do for a living? And they always like, oh, is that a thing? But, I think the reality is we have to professionalise our sector. We have to find a way to maybe create that. I think Kellyanne touched on it earlier, recognised qualifications in our sector. We don't really have that, no matter what you study at university or affiliated kind of studies. There's nothing that you can say that's recognised across, our industry as a whole. We've got aspirations at Homes for Students to grow the programme we've launched over the next 5 years, and hopefully work in partnership with the university to get that accredited status, so that when someone looks at a CV and sees, completed this course, that's something across the sector that will carry weight. And that can only work in our favour for our teams, but also for the sector. And I think, you want qualifications to be recognised across our businesses, not just, we've got an internal progression program, you've graduated, great, that works for us within our four walls. I think you will lose some great people as part of that process, but you're also going to gain them. And I just think you have to do that as a sector, as a group. We have to find ways to explore, push at those doors and really create an opportunity. And it doesn't always have to be linear either. So I think, some of the rate that homes and students has grown over the last 5 years, we've seen so many people move from department to different departments. Not everyone's just stepping up into their boss's shoes when they move on. I think I'm a big believer in developing and giving opportunities to people to explore new direction, I suppose. And one of the things we've seen out of our recent journey is more and more people actually recognizing that's something I'm really passionate about. That's something I'd like to do more of, and trying to put themselves in that space. And you just got to give people the opportunity. So it's a long way to go, I'd say. But there needs to be a will and a want from senior people within the sector to kind of get their heads together and work out, what's needed. But in all honesty, there's definitely opportunity there, I think.
It's really inspiring to hear that is still going on at Homes for Students, because one of the concerns in the back of my mind is I came up in an internship program after having lived in a building. I don't really hear much about that anymore. Is that still out there? Is that widespread? It's certainly not been happening where I've come from in any kind of robust fashion. And I think there's a lot of, it's just accommodation kind of narrative around what this product is or what this sector is, but it should be kind of repositioned as a lifestyle sector, and it's transformational. It's a bridge between hospitality, wellness, education. I mean, to your point, John, if there can be accreditation and that's an active line of work, that's incredible. And it's super interdisciplinary. Like, if we need people to innovate because we are so closely competitive and there is a limit to the product that we currently provide, there's such a window of opportunity for people to go into other remits around design, psychology, sustainability for sure, different types of technology, whether that's digital, whether that's in situ in a residence. There's all this opportunity that we don't currently leverage, but we're aware of the challenges that exist, and talent could fill that, and it's the talent we can foster that live with us.
I'm going to say it before I get a phone call from Aaron or Robin at Yugo, but Yugo, it's 38% of their staff are students that are either currently living with them or that they have lived with them. So it is it's a huge number there. So that's really very much ingrained into Yugo, and I find that really interesting because I think there's such an opportunity. But what do we need to give them? What do we need to give students to show them that, or our residents or anyone that there is that opportunity there? It's not just a case of the roles, I don't think, but maybe it is also about the fact that we need those availabilities there.
Yeah, we have such an opportunity with student staff. I think I can imagine, I don't know the numbers for other organisations. I used to work at Unipol. Such a high proportion of those staff then came through the reins. One thing that why I love this industry as well is what you were saying, Romy, is there's so many opportunities to do so many different things within the organization. Like, I'm a perfect example of that. I studied events and business. I was not going to get into real estate, let's be honest. I then went and worked for an organization where I worked on policy, where my CEO decided to put me in the investor meetings. I then would go to all of the pre-application for new developments, help and sit with the design team about future-proofing and designing these buildings. Then I ran a full wellbeing program, experience program that I had 35 members of staff for across 16 different sites. I think there's so much opportunity there. And like, sometimes you're not defined by a job role. And I also think where training schemes, such as what John just mentioned, about learning about the whole business at a general level is also something that could be a huge opportunity for the sector as well. So although the community hubs are remit driven, I think there's an opportunity to bring all of these cohorts of people together to learn from each other as well.
Yeah, and I think it keeps coming back to leadership. Who championed you? Kellyanne, your CEO, put you in those meetings. Higher up people in the organisation noted your talent, your skills, your interests, and found ways to deliver a pathway to you. There's so many different types of training that I think is needed, A, to be in the 21st century across the top levels of business, but B, to ensure that we're fostering talent, allowing people to innovate, and the importance of how that can drive business value, growth, returns. That's the key word that everyone wants to hear. There's a real pathway you can literally map out to show what the benefit is of employing those people, especially if there's huge providers like YouGo and, like you said, John, at Homes for Students. You can show what proportion of people are working for you, what value do they deliver every day. That's quite an easy ROI piece to pull together. So why is there not more emphasis on the type of training needed at those levels to allow us to open our eyes better to the opportunities that could be presented? Because there's step one, how do we get people who already are students and living with us into these roles? But step two, what do we need to do further in terms of collaboration as a sector to invest in society in different places to open up higher education as an opportunity to people? It kind of goes much further beyond the market we already serve. There's this whole world, country, Europe of young people who might not have the opportunities that we could possibly present to them if we're able to invest, get our heads together. And I think that's what I love about the community hubs. This is only going to push forward a greater degree of collaboration the further these sessions move on. And one of my favorite things about the hub so far is that the class team spend a lot of time monitoring the sessions, reviewing the conversation that happened, trying to define how to optimize the next session. So I mean, one of the learnings is in advance, it'd be great to define a topic so that people can come prepared and potentially tell colleagues or other people that might be interested in that topic. And I think that constant optimization from the class as an organization is what is really also driving the value of each of these sessions progressively and gives it such an exciting future.
And Romy, I think that defining the topics, I think maybe there's a bit more work to be done for us on a longer term plan as well. So, at the minute, I think they almost stand on their own independently across the number of times to do it through the year. So it could be that we invest a bit more time into kind of a more structured plan so that there's some collaboration between the different hubs as well. But I think there's so much more to go. There's so much more opportunity. Like you say, the numbers have been growing every time I've taken part so far, and the last one being the largest so far from my perspective. I'd hope to see that grow again and again and again. The opportunity's huge.
John, we've heard from you. You're obviously leading and moderating the operations community hub. Romy, you're leading and moderating the marketing community hub. Kellyanne, let's not forget the HR and investment hubs as well. What are they adding to the sector?
Yeah, I mentioned the HR one slightly before. I think I mentioned there some of the challenges. But for us, these are the people that are building our cultures, are recruiting our new staff, but also are retaining our staff. So I think they've got a really, really important role in being able to basically help shape the next generation of talent that is coming in, whilst also, cultivating the stuff, the talent that we have. So I think there's a real opportunity. Also, in general, HR and staff don't go to conferences, so they don't have a huge network as well. So I think there's a real learning there from each other. I would say asset management and investment, these are people that are managing portfolios, navigating kind of operational challenges and responding to huge changing markets and challenges as well. So similar to what John and Romy have both said, I think there's an opportunity here to learn over borders. What we're finding is organizations that are normally quite siloed in terms of regional are really learning from best practices, what's similarities that they're seeing, particularly around maybe policy legislation or portfolio kind of appetite. And that was a really, really interesting conversation, which actually ended up moving into what data is needed, how will AI play into some of the day-to-day as well, which is quite interesting because AI was a ongoing prominent topic in multiple of the hubs.
I mean, we're coming towards the end of the conversation. I don't want this to end because I'm learning so much from you all. But John, is there kind of, something that you would like to, I guess, kind of look to the future? What do you want the community hubs to do, for the future of leadership in the sector?
Firstly, I think I've volunteered to kind of continue to moderate the operations hub deliberately because I'd like to see a little bit more consistency over time. I think if you hand that baton over, you kind of have to start again a little bit each time. So I think a structured plan, continued growth in terms of participation. I'd like to try and find ways to explore not just sharing of ideas, but actually sharing of resources. How do we, without giving away all our individual secrets, and I get there's some elements of intellectual, property, and I get that, but there's absolutely merit in sharing resources, and work that's been done that will benefit everyone. So I think for me, it's the start of a great journey. There's loads to go. Don't even know where we could end up, but with the right energy, participations, ideas, I think we can only benefit in the long term.
And Romy, what would you like to see from this ongoing movement with the Class Foundation?
I think it'd be really interesting to see if we could follow a similar format to the way that the class do their conferences, and potentially have kind of spotlights on destinations, geography. Say we did an Italy spotlight or a France spotlight, and still have all the same people in the hub engaging in the conversation, but really focus the learning across Europe. We've talked a lot about the UK and Europe and how they're very interconnected, but they're also very siloed. And I think it would be really interesting to kind of foster input on challenges in those specific regions, and then find opportunities to suggest solutions that we've got from other geographies and bring that together into a narrative. And I think if the topics are really focused and we can say, okay, we're going to talk about AI as a globalized topic, but then we're going to talk about how do we sell experience in France, because that's a topic that's come up that I thought was a really interesting phrased question, will help people prepare and also come ready to offer advice, listen. And I think just having more people involved in the teams, inviting other team members, because this is a confidence building exercise to the same extent. No one can show up and dominate the conversation. It needs to be collaborative. It needs to be, we want input from different people in different areas. So if that means for a couple of sessions, people come along just to listen and see how it goes, and then they input, I think that would be great. So to John's point, I hope this continues for a really long time. I hope we can keep the regularity and make a real focus on specific topics, and make sure that we're kind of addressing that we're all sharing this challenge across Europe and it's not too UK focused.
And Kellyanne, obviously we've been talking about the community hubs, the ongoing kind of virtual network. How is this going to come to life at the class conference in November?
Yeah, so we have, again, feedback from the community hubs was that they don't really get to attend many conferences, but when they do attend a conference, it's very overwhelming and intimidating. So what we decided to do was create a full space and program that is led by the community leaders and members of the community hubs, so that they can talk about and explore what they want within their own learning boundaries. So we did that whilst also being able to experience a much larger conference as well at scale. So we are working with the community hub participants to come and attend, whilst also trying to engage with more senior leaders to nominate more people to come and identify who those voices are. So that is the opportunity that we're looking at, hopefully successfully executing at the conference this year, and hoping that grows year on year. I've got some really big ideas. I would love potentially to maybe host their own conference in the future. Maybe they could be their own awards, whether it's there's day training sessions, whether we can, as Romy was mentioning, organizations in different markets host their own community hubs live. So we could kind of, have a look at like Italy or Spain having their own meetup as well as maybe having a European level one. There's so much opportunity as well for this to continue to grow, not just only on a kind of a developing those individuals, but as a whole brand and initiative itself as well.
Wow, that just sounds so exciting, and I can't wait to see it and be part of it. We've come to the end of the conversation now. Like I said, I wish we didn't have to end it, because I'm finding it inspiring, and I can only imagine how inspiring the leaders of tomorrow will find a conversation like this. So thank you so much, Kellyanne, for kind of initiating this and driving it forward. There's lots of ideas out there, but it's just great to see how kind of thought through and the future that this can have. And thank you, John and Romy, for doing such a great job in leading your specialisms as well. If you want to take part in the community hubs or want to explore becoming a partner with the Class Foundation, you can reach out to Carolina with a C at theclassfoundation.com or visit the website classfoundation.com/partnership. That was just brilliant conversation. Thank you so much. And we hope the audience takes the opportunity to find out more and will potentially attend the conference in Lisbon in November. But as you've heard, even if you aren't able to, there are so many opportunities to get involved locally and virtually as well. Thank you again to my student halls for their Spotlight Boost sponsorship of this mini-series. And thank you all for listening. We will see you back again for season 5 of Housed in September.